War of the Vision's most notorious resistance tank is getting her EX job, and when she got it in release, people were very mitigated. On some side, she does not get better hate generation tools, so it's really not that great. But on the other end, what she does get really does complement her kit very well. And so I think it's a good EX upgrade, but today we'll take a look at the stats, the abilities, how to use her, how to build her, and then in which game modes is she going to shine or not perform well. So, first of all, it doesn't matter what the kit is, if the stats aren't there, the unit cannot be good. Compared to other tanks, Whisper has about half their HP. Like, we see a lot of top tier tanks now go into fights with 9,000, 1100 HP, it's crazy how much they have. Whisper, when fully built, will have about 6,000 HP. As you can tell right now, she's got roughly half of King Mont's HP, so it's really low. In that sense, she's way below average. She has okay attack, she's a little bit slower than King Mont, but she's still faster than most tanks. She's got okay dexterity, fairly high luck, she can be evadey in the right setup, has a little bit of defense, a little bit of spirit, but mainly the one edge she's always have is still here, and it's 30 resistance to everything. That's the way she's built, and that's what she'll have to rely on to be competitive with the other options. Looking at how her stats move from 99 to 120, I think stopping at 115 is not that much of an option. If it was a DPS unit, I would be fine. Lacking 500 HP from 115 to 120 would not be the end of the world, but she has such a low base HP that I think every little bit help, and the extra 500 you get by moving from 115 to 120 will probably be necessary for her to be competitive with other tanks. The rest of the stats aren't really impacted that much. You gain the majority of the attack buff, you gain the agility up, you gain the dexterity and luck up from moving to 115. It's really just the extra HP that makes me think the 120 upgrade is necessary for her. Also, the ability is really cool. Talking about abilities, first off, her Divine Healing is upgraded. Now, that's an ability I always turned off for Whisper. I feel like it's really bad for her. It increases max HP in a percentage of your unit's base HP, but she has one of the lowest base HPs in the game, so it's not giving her much. Now though, it's upgraded to also give her Protect, Shell, and Regen for 3 turns. These are all status effects that cannot be dispelled, cannot be removed, so no matter what happens, even if she takes the Dispel spread to the face, she's going to be much tankier for a couple turns, and I think that makes it a really good buff for her now. Then her Trinity Break is improved in Quadruple Break, or Quad Love Break if you refer to Google Translate. So what it does, you might look at it and think, oh, it's now decreasing CT by 15. Decreasing CT by 15 is weak. It's like 15% of a turn. It's not a lot, and it won't really impact your game that much. What you do get that's really nice is the fact that it now hits all 3 squares in front of you instead of just the one you target. And then the AP cost is also reduced to 28, which means she has a good chance of using it in a fight. At 34 AP, I found that she would barely ever use that because she never got that much AP to begin with. But now it's a little bit more usable, can hit multiple enemies, and then still applies all the nice debuffs it does. So I think that's a pretty good upgrade. Then her new ability, Protect Break, allows her to decrease defense and spirit before dealing damage. Doesn't seem like the most important ability, but one thing that Whisper lacked was utility. She would come into a fight and all she would do is use Tonic Blade, generate some hate, and then survive. But while she was on the field, she didn't do anything else for your team. Now with this, even if she has low attack and she's not built for damage, she decreases the 2 types of defense and spirit that can go into the negative, and so you amplify damage for the rest of your team. Now that is a really good thing. Again though, the AP cost is fairly high, so it might be hard to build Whisper in order to use those because she would either need bells or Old West TMR or some way of generating enough AP to use these abilities often. So, what are some uses for her? Well, first of all, she is still a specialized tank. I think that's the main way people will keep playing her. She can easily get magic immunity, and with the proper teammate and team composition, she can be built to have both magic and slash immunity, which is very impressive. But compared to most other tanks in the game, she will underperform if she's not resistant against what the enemy has. Like she can't compare to a King Mont with 70 defense and 1100 HP if she's not fighting an enemy against which she has high resistance. It's just not the same unit. Another thing, she can be built to do fairly well as a tank in a dark evasion setup. So if you're using, I don't know, Shadowlink, Ziza, Vinera, whichever unit that you want, and you're running a dark evasion team, Whisper has enough evasion built in to do fairly well. She'll evade some attacks, and then if she's resistant to the ones that do hit her, she'll survive for a long while. So that can work. And then finally, she can do a surprisingly good Bruiser. You do need a couple things to make her work, like Old OS TMR to give her some defense penetration, and the new Spine Blade that was just released, but she can be a decent damage dealer to support your team. With that, most opponents will probably underestimate her, because we've only seen Tank Whisper so far. We've never really seen her deal much damage. But now that she has powerful debuffs on attacks, it's worth building her to do damage and then apply those debuffs for your team to then finish off the opponent. With that said, first build is our typical Resistance Bruiser build. Usually when I show these builds on screen, I don't put any other party member vision cards, but for this one I did put Solidus on, so the stats that you see do include one other VC alongside Fenrir. What she gets is roughly 5.6 thousand HP, which is fine, not terrible, but it's an okay amount of HP. Then she has really low attack, not great agility, like the other stats are pretty low. And then you can tell, Builder for some reason did not update the Spirit, that should be around 20. But the main thing she has is 85 slash resist. If you're pairing her with a Tubi or a Silma, easily get to 100. And then 72 magic resist. The second she uses the resist magic buff, she becomes immune to magic for a couple turns. So with that, she'll be really hard to kill. And then I like the idea of pairing her with Kingmon's TMR for some AoE resistance, since a lot of enemies that have magic damage have large AoEs, so even if she's immune, it's not really useful if your teammate that's sitting next to you dies with you. So giving some AoE resistance will allow you to save your teammates a little bit more. This will be great against enemies that don't have many damage types, like Moor. It's also great versus Energists like Garval. They do have a missile attack, but it's one of the weakest in their kit, so you're still forcing them to use their worst attack. Tidus only has slash attack. Oron, unless he's Pugilist sub, you've got a pretty good chance at fighting him like this. So you need, like, it's a very specialized build. You will need to pick your opponents. Be wary though of enemies that have the ability to either ignore your resistances or reduce them altogether. They will wreck you. You will not compete with a super high HP, high defense tank if your resistance goes down, right? So King Mon can reduce slash resist, Dwayne can, Gilgamesh can, Stern can. There are quite a few options in the game right now that you have to be wary of. And then I've tried Whisper before EX against Helena, and I was frequently hit for like 3,000 to 4,000 through my magic immunity when she had that Cypress Pile. So I don't think having 6,000 HP will change much. Whisper will still probably die in 2 to 3 hits, so depending on if that's enough for you, you can do it, but otherwise I would avoid fighting Black Witch, especially if she has ways to increase her own magic resistance penetration. Now, let's look at a Bruiser build, because I thought these seemed really fun. I would put the Spinal Blade and Old One Apron on Whisper, and then she goes from 20 to 70 defense penetration. She can now deal damage, and she's got 900 attack. If we added another Attack Hop Vision card, this could go to around 1100, which is decent. And then with that, there's no real way to give her damage and resistances to 2 different types at once, but it's still fairly easy to give her magic immunity in a fight where she has decent attack. Like you see here, she's got 85% magic resistance before applying her own buff, and she can just go in and wreck people. So that seems like a fun build. I don't know how well it'll compare to a character like Dwayne that can have insane HP and insane damage together, but hey, I would have to try it and let you guys know, so tune in for that in the future. Now, it's really hard to give a rating to Whisper, no matter the type of content. I feel like when she's good, she's 10. And when she's not good, she's like a 3, because she's specialized. And even in PvE, there are some fights where you'll fight like only missile users. She's gonna be perfect. You can easily get her to insane amounts of missile resistance. But if you're fighting diversified enemy types, then she's not that good. So overall, let's go for a 5 out of 10. There are better tanks, unless it's a very specific type of enemy everywhere around the map. Arena is really where Whisper shines, because you can pick your enemies, you can make sure she's in front of the enemies she's built to counter, make sure that the enemy team does not have a way to deal with her resistances, and then she's just unkillable and she's gonna win the fights. Guild battle, it's a little bit tougher because now you can't pick your enemies unless somebody else has scouted the battle before you, but even then you cannot look at equipment or sub jobs. So you can't take into account every single factor and make sure that she can counter them perfectly. That means she might do well, but I don't think she'll do better than most other tanks in the game. And then for class matches, it's a tough call. Whisper has a cost of 70, which is low. It's one of the only URs that has that cost, which means she can be run alongside better teammates, better vision cards, depending on the costs of the rules. But if you're running her again in manual, well, people are going to ignore her. They will not target her specifically, so she cannot tank per se. In that case, what can she bring? I think she can be a really strong character if you're using her manually with the night job and you AP break enemies. So you go to them, they will generally ignore her if they can't deal enough damage to her, but once she gets there, she can just start attacking their AP directly and preventing those characters from doing anything. So that's one use where she might do well, but I'm thinking there's so many good options, like characters in which if they do their power play, they just straight up win the game. For Whisper, her power play simply disables one enemy at a time, so it doesn't feel like she'll be the most competitive option unless you're running her because of the cost 70. In Odo though, she might do a little bit better. Again, low-ish cost, and this time the enemies will target her because she can generate hate, and well, if you're on Odo, people don't ignore hate, so she might do much better like this. With that said, I'm really excited for her EX job. I don't want to set too high of expectations, but I will be building her and using her. I love resistances in general. Well, if you've seen me play Freya, yeah, you probably know that. So I'm very excited to try Whisper out and try her in damage-oriented builds as well. So tune in for that. If you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And then as always, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.